What if the biggest threat inside the silo isn't rebellion, but memory itself? Because episode 2 quietly asks a terrifying question. If someone can decide what you remember, can they also decide who you are? And by the end of this episode, that question becomes more dangerous than anything outside the silo. Because Juliette may have survived the impossible, but she might be slowly losing the one thing that made her Juliette in the first place. For most of this episode, the story isn't really about action. It's about identity. We watch Juliette move through familiar places that suddenly feel completely foreign to her. Friends look like strangers. Memories arrive only as brief flashes. Tiny objects trigger emotions she can't explain. And that's what makes these scenes so uncomfortable. The people around her remember everything. She remembers almost nothing. It's like watching someone wake up in their own life and realize they no longer belong inside it. But there are cracks in the system, small ones. Every time Juliette touches something connected to her past, pieces of herself begin pushing back. The helmet, the note, the stars, even Walker's words. The memories aren't completely gone. They're buried. And that detail feels incredibly important because the episode keeps hinting that memory isn't something that can simply be erased forever. A person's experiences shape them too deeply. You can suppress them, you can distort them, but removing them entirely may be impossible. And that's where the real conflict begins. Because Camille and the people guiding her don't just want Juliette to forget, they want her to accept a new story. That's much more dangerous. Forgetting is one thing, believing a lie is another. The moment someone becomes the narrator of your life, they gain incredible power over you. And the episode keeps returning to that idea. Who controls the story? Who decides what is true? Who gets to rewrite history? These questions don't just apply to Juliette, they apply to the entire silo. Because we've already learned that previous generations had their memories manipulated. Entire rebellions were forgotten. History was replaced. New myths were created. The people inside the silo believe they know their past. But do they really? Or are they simply living inside a carefully designed version of history? That's what makes this episode so fascinating. It turns memory into a political weapon. And honestly, that's one of the scariest ideas the show has introduced. Because a society without memory is incredibly easy to control. People can't learn from old mistakes. They can't question official stories. They can't compare the present to the past. They simply accept whatever version of reality they're given. And that's exactly why Juliette is so dangerous. Not because she's violent, not because she's leading another rebellion, but because she remembers, even in fragments, even subconsciously. Her very existence threatens the system. The fact that she survived outside already shattered one of the silo's biggest beliefs. Now imagine if she fully remembers everything. Imagine if everyone else starts remembering too. The entire foundation of control could collapse. Another interesting part of the episode is how differently people react to Juliette's condition. Shirley can't bear seeing her like this. Walker takes a much harsher approach. But underneath those different reactions is the same pain. They're grieving someone who is technically still alive. Physically, Juliette is standing right in front of them. Emotionally, she feels gone. And that's heartbreaking, because memory is deeply connected to relationships. The people we love are partly made from shared experiences, inside jokes, arguments, moments of sacrifice, years of trust. Take those memories away, and suddenly even the closest relationships become fragile. Episode 2 captures that sadness beautifully. Walker doesn't try to force Juliette to remember. Instead, she challenges her. Trust your instincts, trust your gut, because deep down, some part of the old Juliette is still there. And honestly, that may become one of the show's central ideas moving forward. Maybe identity isn't only memory, maybe it's also choice. Even without remembering everything, Juliette still feels drawn towards truth. She still questions authority. She still follows strange instincts. She still refuses easy answers. That rebellious spirit hasn't disappeared. And that suggests something fascinating. Perhaps who we are goes deeper than what we remember. Meanwhile, the flashbacks continue expanding the mystery surrounding the world before the silos, and this timeline may end up being just as important as Juliette's story, because we're beginning to see how dangerous memory manipulation could become on a much larger scale. The discussions surrounding trauma, forgetting, and rewriting painful experiences raise difficult questions. If someone suffers unbearable pain, should they have the right to forget? Many people would probably say yes, but then another question appears. Who decides what gets removed? Where is the line? And what happens when governments or powerful institutions gain access to that technology? Suddenly, a medical treatment becomes a tool of control, a tool capable of changing entire societies. The episode never gives simple answers. Instead, it leaves viewers uncomfortable. Because there are situations where forgetting sounds appealing. Pain can destroy people. Trauma can consume lives. But memory, even painful memory, is still part of who we are. Remove enough of it, and eventually you become someone else. That idea connects perfectly with what's happening to Juliette. Her memories may be fragmented, but every recovered piece feels like a battle for her own identity. And then there's Lucas, possibly the biggest mystery of the episode. Everyone is looking for him. No one seems to know where he is, yet his name keeps returning again and again. That usually means one thing in shows like Silo. He's important, very important. Remember, Lucas spent time learning things that ordinary citizens were never supposed to know. He discovered hidden information. He gained access to secrets. And Bernard clearly saw value in him. So where is he now? Hiding? Captured? Working on something bigger? The episode intentionally leaves these questions unanswered, but it definitely feels like Lucas will become a key player very soon. Then we have perhaps the most disturbing development of all, the barrels, the memory drug potentially entering the entire water supply. If that plan succeeds, we're no longer talking about one person's memories. We're talking about an entire civilization, a complete reset, and that's terrifying. Because history would once again disappear. Relationships would change. Questions would vanish. The people would become easier to guide, easier to calm, easier to control. This also creates an interesting moral dilemma. From the perspective of those in power, maybe they genuinely believe they're protecting everyone. The silo has experienced rebellions before. Chaos costs lives. Fear spreads quickly. Perhaps forgetting is the kinder option, but good intentions can still create terrible outcomes. Because peace built on lies is still built on lies. And eventually, the truth always finds its way back. Episode 2 keeps dropping hints that memories cannot stay buried forever. Objects trigger recollections, dreams resurface, emotions survive even when facts disappear. The human mind fights to preserve itself. Which brings us to one of the episode's biggest themes. History matters. Painful memories matter. Mistakes matter. Because without them, people become vulnerable to repeating the same cycles. And maybe that's exactly what's been happening inside the silo for centuries. Different rebellions, different leaders, different generations, but always the same pattern. Forget, reset, begin again. Forget, reset, begin again. It's an endless loop, and Juliette might be the first person capable of finally breaking it. As for theories, here's an interesting one. What if previous resets never fully worked? What if fragments of old memories still exist throughout the silo? Maybe certain traditions, fears, and beliefs are leftovers from forgotten generations. Maybe some people instinctively distrust authority because pieces of old experiences remain buried inside them. Another possibility is that Juliette's resistance to the treatment isn't random at all.
Perhaps surviving outside changed something, or perhaps certain individuals are naturally harder to manipulate. Either way, the system appears far less perfect than its creators believe. And that's usually where great stories become dangerous, because once a system starts failing, hidden truths begin emerging everywhere. By the end of episode 2, the biggest mystery isn't what's outside the silo, it's what's inside people's minds. Who remembers the truth? Who forgot it? And who has been rewriting history this entire time? This episode slows down the action, but in many ways it feels even more important than the premiere, because it changes the entire